Most people don't fail discipline because they're lazy. They fail it before they even realize the test has begun. And that right there, that single moment, is the reason 99% of people are still exactly where they were last year, last month, and last decade. What I'm about to tell you changes everything, and I mean that. If this kind of real, no-nonsense storytelling hits different for you, do me a favor right now, hit that subscribe button and smash the notification bell. Because we drop content like this every single week, and I don't want you missing what's coming next. This channel is built for people who are done settling, people who want the truth about why they keep falling short and what to actually do about it. So welcome. Let's get into it. Here's what nobody tells you about discipline. It's not a skill you either have or don't have. It's not something you wake up with one morning after reading the right book or watching the right video. Discipline is a test, and that test, that real, raw, unforgiving test, starts the moment you open your eyes in the morning, not after coffee, not after your alarm goes off the second time. The moment you open your eyes. And here's the brutal part. Most people fail it before they even sit up in bed. They fail it in the first 10 minutes of being conscious, and they spend the rest of the day wondering why nothing in their life ever changes. I want you to think about someone you know. Maybe it's you. Maybe it's a version of you from 5 years ago. This person has big goals. They talk about them all the time. They've got the vision board. They've got the notes app full of plans. They go to bed every night pumped up, telling themselves that tomorrow is the day. Tomorrow everything changes. Tomorrow they start for real, and then tomorrow comes, and something happens. Something so small, so seemingly insignificant, that most people never even connect it to why their life isn't moving forward. But I'm going to connect it for you today. Because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. There was a study done at a university, and I want you to really lock into this, where researchers tracked the morning routines of over 200 people across 12 weeks. They weren't looking at productivity. They weren't measuring output or success metrics in the traditional sense. They were looking at one thing only: decision making in the first 10 minutes after waking up. What they found was nothing short of stunning. The people who made even one small, deliberate, intentional choice in those first 10 minutes, just one, were statistically far more likely to follow through on their goals for the rest of the day. Not because of motivation, not because of talent, but because of something that scientists call behavioral momentum. And I need you to hold on to that term because it's the key to everything I'm about to tell you. Behavioral momentum is the idea that your brain is essentially a train. And like a train, it takes enormous energy to get moving from a dead stop. But once it's rolling, even slowly, it takes far less energy to keep it going than it did to start it. The problem is that most people never give the train a push. They hit snooze, they roll over. They reach for their phone and immediately begin consuming social media, news, other people's lives, other people's highlight reels. And in doing that, they hand the controls of their brain over to someone else before they've even had the chance to grab the wheel themselves. They start the day reactive instead of proactive. And a reactive mind, my friend, is a mind that cannot be disciplined. Not today. Not ever. Not until something changes at that very first moment. Now here's where this gets really interesting and a little uncomfortable. I need you to stay with me because this next part is where most people tap out. Not because they don't understand it, but because it forces them to look in a mirror they've been avoiding. The problem isn't your alarm. The problem isn't your environment. The problem isn't your schedule or your job or the fact that you stayed up too late watching Netflix. Those are symptoms. The real problem is something deeper, something wired into you so thoroughly that you've mistaken it for your personality, and it has a name. It's called the comfort default. The comfort default is your brain's automatic setting. It's the factory reset position your mind snaps back to every single time you don't consciously override it. And it has one job, one mission: to keep you safe, comfortable, and exactly where you are, not where you want to be, where you are. Because to your brain, familiar equals safe, and safe equals survival. Your brain doesn't care about your goals, it cares about your survival. And until you understand that, you will keep fighting your brain instead of working with it. This is where the story gets good. Because there's a man I want to tell you about. His name isn't important right now, but his story is. This man was an average guy by almost every measure. Grew up middle class, went to an okay school, got an okay job, married, had kids, and for 15 years he lived in a fog, not a terrible fog, not a tragic fog, just a gray, quiet, unremarkable fog where every day looked exactly like the one before it. He had dreams. Big ones. He wanted to build something, start a business, create something that mattered. But every morning, without fail, he failed the test. He slept through the alarm. He scrolled for 40 minutes before getting out of bed. He moved through the day like he was underwater. And every night, he told himself the same thing. Tomorrow. Tomorrow is the day. Then one night, something happened. Something that would crack this man's life wide open and force him to confront everything he had been avoiding. He was sitting at his kitchen table at 11:30 at night, and his youngest daughter, she was 7 years old, walked in and found him there. She looked at him for a long moment, and then she asked him a question that he said changed his life forever. She looked up at him with those big, tired eyes, and she said, "Daddy, why do you always look like you're waiting for something?" He didn't have an answer, and that silence, that awful, hollow silence, was louder than anything he had ever heard. He sat there for 2 hours after she went back to bed, just sitting, just thinking, and somewhere in that silence, he made a decision. Not a plan, not a resolution. A decision, and there is a massive difference between those two things that almost nobody talks about. A plan is a document. A resolution is a wish. A decision is a shift in identity. When you make a true decision, you stop being the person who is going to do the thing, and you start being the person who does the thing. It happens in a moment. It's invisible to everyone around you, but it's as real and as physical as a bone breaking. Something inside you snaps, not in a bad way, in a way that says, this is no longer negotiable. This is who I am now. And that man, sitting alone at that kitchen table at nearly midnight, with his daughter's words still ringing in his ears, he made that kind of decision. The next morning, he woke up before his alarm, not because he said it earlier, not because he had a new system or a new app. He woke up because somewhere in his brain, something had shifted, something had flipped. And in that first moment of consciousness, instead of reaching for his phone, instead of hitting snooze, he sat up. That's it. He just sat up. And for a second, he sat there in the dark and he just breathed. One breath. Intentional, deliberate, conscious. And in that one small, invisible act, he passed the test, not the big test, not the life test, just the first test, the 10-minute test. And that small win, that tiny, microscopic victory started the train rolling. And you already know what happens when the train starts rolling. Within a month, that man had restructured his entire morning. Not in some extreme boot camp, 5 a.m. cold shower way. In a quiet, consistent, sustainable way. He started going to bed 30 minutes earlier. He started keeping a notepad by the bed and writing 3 things he was going to do the next day before he closed his eyes. He started waking up before the house got loud and spending 20 minutes in complete silence with nothing but his thoughts and a cup of coffee. No phone, no news, no noise, just him. And in those 20 minutes, every single morning, he started asking himself a question. A simple, devastatingly powerful question that I'm going to give you in just a minute. A question that, if you start asking it every single morning, will rewire the way you think about discipline entirely. But first I need to tell you what happened to this man, because the ending of his story is not what you think it is. 3 years after that night, at the kitchen table, this man had built something real. Not a billion-dollar company, not a viral brand, something real. Something that was his. He had launched a small business doing something he genuinely loved. It was profitable enough for his wife to leave her job if she wanted to. His kids noticed the difference. He noticed the difference. But here's the part that most people miss when they hear success stories like this. They think the transformation happened because of the business, because of the money, because of the external results. But this man, when he talked about it, said something that I want you to hear very clearly. He said the transformation happened in the first 10 minutes of the first morning. Everything else was just what came after. And that is the whole game right there. That is the entire secret that productivity gurus and self-help empires make billions of dollars dancing around without ever quite saying out loud. The game is won or lost in the first 10 minutes, not the first hour, not the first decision of the workday. The first 10 minutes of consciousness, the moment your brain goes from asleep to awake. That gap, that tiny, invisible, taken for granted gap, is where your entire life is being decided every single day, without exception. Now I promised you a question, and here it is. Every morning, before you do anything else, before you check your phone, before you make coffee, before you do a single thing, ask yourself this: who am I choosing to be today? Not what am I going to do, not what do I need to accomplish, who am I choosing to be? Because discipline is not a to-do list. It is an identity. It is a daily, active, conscious choice to be the person who does the hard thing before the easy thing. The person who pushes before they pull back. The person who shows up not because they feel like it, but because they decided, really decided, that this is who they are. The people who consistently pass the 10-minute test are not superhuman. They are not genetically gifted with willpower. They are not waking up every morning flooded with motivation and positive energy. They are waking up tired and cold and distracted and flawed, just like you. The only difference, the single, solitary difference, is that they made a decision before they went to sleep about who they were going to be when they woke up. And when that alarm goes off, they honor that decision, not because it feels good, because they decided, because they are that person now. And the more mornings they honor that decision, the deeper it roots itself into their identity. Until one day, it stops being something they do, and it becomes something they are. That is when the real transformation begins, not in some big, cinematic movie moment way, in a quiet, steady, unstoppable way. Here's what I want you to do right now. Tonight, before you close your eyes, I want you to write down one sentence. Just one. It starts with the words, "Tomorrow morning I am someone who," and you finish that sentence, not with a task, with an identity, not "I will wake up early," but "I am someone who respects their own time enough to rise before the noise," not "I will not check my phone," but "I am someone who owns the first moments of their day." That sentence, that single, simple sentence is your anchor. And when your alarm goes off tomorrow morning and every instinct in your body is screaming at you to stay horizontal, that sentence is what you reach for. Not motivation, not willpower, your decision, your identity, yourself. The 99% who fail the discipline test don't fail because they're broken. They fail because nobody ever showed them what the test actually was. Nobody ever told them that the first 10 minutes aren't a warm-up. They're the whole game. You know that now. You've heard it, you've felt it, and now you have a choice. The same choice that man had at his kitchen table at 11:30 at night. The same choice every person who has ever built something real has had to make at some point. Not whether to work harder, not whether to find a better system, whether to decide, whether to truly, finally, irreversibly decide who you are. That's it. That's the whole thing. Drop a comment right now and tell me this. What is the one thing you are going to change about your first 10 minutes tomorrow morning? Don't overthink it. Don't write a paragraph. Just one thing. Because I read these, and sometimes the right answer is the simplest one you've been ignoring for months. If this hit you somewhere real today, share this video with someone in your life who needs to hear it. You already know who it is. The friend? The sibling? The person who keeps talking about changing but can't seem to start? Send it to them. Sometimes the right video at the right moment is what cracks a door open that's been stuck for years. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now, because we're not done. There's a lot more coming, and the next one might be the one that changes everything for you. Stay locked in.